Hi, and thanks for joining in today. You're going to love what we've got in today's tutorial, but first, a big shout out to Mrs. Ebbs and all of her students from the Nature School in Port Macquarie. Hey guys, you asked if we can use the Splat to draw one of the first fleet of ships. Well, here it is, the HMS Sirius. The Sirius had a number of cannons to defend the fleet, but unlike other warships, it was able to carry a massive amount of cargo because of the shape of the hull. You may not nail your drawing in the first attempt. Here was my first sketch, trying to figure out the position of things. And then I went to another sketch. It looked okay, but the masts were too wide. They looked like telegraph poles. So it took me 3 attempts. So grab your splat, a ruler and a pencil, and an eraser. Let's get started. I'm going to give you a measurement for the starting point. 12 centimeters across the bottom, and we're starting the first cube right almost touching the bottom. So there's the first step. Slide up and draw 2 more edges. Now rotate the tool and draw in the far edges. So there's my first cube or crate. Watch closely how I stack another cube behind. Here's the cheats way. Put your pencil on that spot. Line up the slot and slide the splat in that direction. Then trace around those 4 lines and, forgotten the center line. Don't forget about the center splat line as well. And there's another cube. We're going to repeat again. Find that spot, line up the slot, slide along. It's fine if your cubes don't all line up perfectly because we'll use a ruler to tidy that up later. Halfway along that line, put a little mark. This is going to be the front of the ship. We're starting from that point, but this is really important. Stay on the line before you steer off to the point. Same on the other side. Draw along the line before you steer away and meet that point. Cool. Now the front. We're going to drop a line straight down to meet that point. So come straight down and then curve around to there. Don't go any further because that's where it'll go into the water. Actually, let's get that the right shape. We're going to follow that curve with a light line and take that line all the way back, but stop halfway in that cube. Halfway up that line, we're going to draw an arc or a curvy line to match. That's the back of the ship that's stuck out of the water. And I'm tidying that up. You could use a ruler if you want, but don't go too dark yet because some of it will be rubbing out. Now on that guide line, I'm doing a squiggly wave line. To make it look like waves are bouncing off the hull, you can come out a bit further and do a second squiggly line. These old sailing boats had a piece of timber coming out. It's called a bow sprit. I'm using the splat to imagine it coming straight out with the guide line, then come upwards from the end about a good finger distance or 2, and then use a ruler to join those points because the bow sprit was angled and pointing up into the air. Give it some thickness with a second line and then somehow join it onto the front of your ship. Now find that point and place a dot for me. We're going to draw a hatch. Put the point of the splat just below that dot and draw 2 short lines. Now flip the splat upside down and we're going to draw a mirror image of those. So 1, 2 lines. You might need to just sketch in the corners to help them meet. Come down below with 2 more lines and that makes it look hollow, especially when you use some shading to make it look darker inside. I found on the Sirius this curious little like 2-letter T's beside each other. I'm not sure whether they hung sails from there. Let me know if you can find out what that is. So let's repeat a second hatch at the back. Now this hatch, instead of making a hole, it's going to have a lid on it. I'm going to drop a short line down from each corner there, there, and there. Now all you need to do is to join the ends of those lines and boom, some very thin lines, a bit of wood grain, makes it look like an old timber hatch. I'm using the smaller lips tipped over and I'm drawing the boat wheel that they use to sail or steer the ship with. So put some little crisscrosses through it. Design some sort of a shape for it to connect to. Here's how to draw the railing or the gunwale at the back of the ship. draw 4 lines straight up, then connect the top of those lines. You can use a ruler if you wanted to get that fairly neat. I'm kind of sketching it in because I know I'm going to come back later and fix it up. The Gunwale had some little openings in it, so if a massive wave crashed over the deck, it had somewhere to drain away. But it had openings for something else as well. Can you guess what it is I'm sketching? It's a heavy bit of cast iron cylinder sitting on top of a wooden block. It's a small cannon. The hull of the Sirius had a dark line, a darker piece of timber coming on that angle, but starting from that point. So sketch in a guideline and then copy the curve of the front around until it meets. When you've got that right, darken it in and then copy another line just underneath it. Next, draw 3 short lines across in that center cube and then drop some lines straight down. Complete to make a hatch. That's for the cannons. You can draw some of the hatches open like that with the cannon sticking out. But usually, unless they were needed, the hatches would be closed. At the very back is a very fancy window. It would have been the captain's cabin. Small pieces of glass. Go to the very front cube. We're going to place a dot right in the middle and draw a guideline, just a very faint line straight up. Now we're going to mark off. I'm going to use the side of the splat to mark 1, 2 splat lengths, and a third. Now I'm going back down to the first mark and putting the point on it, and I'm drawing a left splat line. We've got to bring one out to the front as well, so slide the splat along and extend that line towards you. Those are what the sails are going to be tied to. Same thing on the next mark up, slide the splat along and extend. These are called the cross beams. Let's draw a short cross beam. Go to the very top of the mast, come down halfway, and then draw a short cross beam. This mast, called the foremast, was the second tallest on the ship. We're going to draw some sails now, all the way along the cross beams, so the sails are tied up with pieces of rope. Now it's time to add a little bit of thickness to each of your cross beams by drawing a second line. When it was time to sail, the poor sailors had to climb up and untie all the ropes to let the sails drop down. The shape of the sails in old sailing ships were actually rectangles. They weren't triangles like modern ships. I'm going along now and adding 2 or 3 little pieces of rope that would be tying up all the sails. Watch really carefully as I draw in the foremast, drawing a small circle at the top and a larger half circle at the bottom. So line those 2 points up, but make sure you don't draw through the sails. You've got to draw that line behind. So the cross beams are sitting in front of the mast. Great, so there's our foremast. We're going to repeat the same thing again in the top of that cube. So remember we found the center. We drew a light line up. We marked off 1, 2, 3. We went to the very first mark and we drew a line out to the left. Now if it looks like it's going to bump into that one, come up a little bit and draw it behind. Just fudge it a little bit so that you haven't got one overlapping. Let's draw another cross beam. The mast you're drawing now in the center of the ship is called the main mast. Now I'm going to speed up to save time the drawing of the main mast, and then behind that I'm going to use the same technique to draw in what's called the Mizzenmast. You'll see the Mizzenmast is the shorter of the 3, and I've gone up just 2 splat lengths for that one. So I've got 1 crossbeam and 1 short crossbeam on top of that. If you've managed to keep up this far, you are doing an awesome job. Thank you so much. Draw in some flags. Can you find out what some of these flags represented? The next piece I'm drawing is pointing backwards, and it's called the boom. So it's behind the mizzenmast. And those two pieces hold a sail in between them. Let's just tie the sail up to the top piece. Cool. To make these masts a lot stronger, they were tied together with lots of pieces of rope. Let's just draw one piece going from the top right over. Now we're going to tie the mast to the side of the ship. So draw three, they would probably be wooden pulleys or something, just 3 dots. And then from the top of the mast, draw a fine line down. Use a sharp pencil for this. We're going to repeat it. Let's come forward. So draw 3 dots somewhere around there from the top of the foremast, 3 ropes down. It probably had more than 3. You can draw lots if you want, but it'll get a bit complicated. So let's go to the back, the mizzenmast. Let's draw another 3. Excellent. On the far side, I'm lining up the ruler, but I'm just giving a slight hint of a rope. They're further away, so they'll be really fine. Let's start off by adding some light inside the captain's cabin. So I'm going to draw this kind of on dusk. The darkest line is the one around the outside of the hull of the ship. I'm going to speed up now and let you watch the rest of the colouring in. I'm leaving you also with some sounds that the sailors probably would have heard for months on end. Mrs. Ebbs and class, this tutorial has given me a real respect for the bravery of the men and women that sailed on these vessels. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your drawings. Bye.